Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Naomi. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode where Zimbardo shows up to save Naomi. Granted, they're stuck in Star Labs because Star Labs has dampening. So, it's not going to be the easiest thing to get out. Luckily, Zimbardo knows his way around because he got the blueprints to Star Labs. So, he's finding a route around that will help them avoid the most people, considering the place is specialized in dampening their power. So, but along the way, Naomi kind of finds out, everything Zimbardo's done has been for her sake. That he wasn't trying to scare her, he was more so trying to warn her, but he went about it the very scary route because he didn't know she wasn't ready to hear the truth. It's one, you're a teenager, a few weeks ago your entire life turned upside down, the ugly truth of everything isn't something that's pleasant to really know, so he ends up using a technique to basically not only show her his memories, she could actually feel them like she was there. And even she's like, wait, was that you wearing a jean jacket? It's like seeing Zimbardo in a way she never got to see him before. Because he was like, yeah, I was different back then. I had a life. I had friends. I had a home. And so understanding, obviously, we get a little peek into some of Earth 29. It does seem like it would be any other Earth. I mean, to be fair, we've seen that with the multiverse. Earth 38, which Supergirl originally was on, was no different from Earth 1, not too different from Earth 2. Obviously, there were some differences. And then, Earth 3 wasn't that, different in certain regards. But it's a lot of places in the multiverse aren't, it's not the crazy differences. They're very similar, just people's lives went down different routes, just different things led them to different places. It does make you wonder, in the grand scheme of the multiverse, it is interesting to know, so that means Naomi, at the very least on this Earth, she has no doppelganger, which is kind of interesting. There's also it's interesting for you to end up on a planet that doesn't have your own doppelganger. I feel like the chances of that are just seem extraordinary. Maybe that's something they'll dive into. Maybe they won't. I just think that's fascinating. It's you just happen to land on a planet that doesn't have a different universal planet version of your planet that just doesn't have versions of you walking around. I'm just surprised it hasn't come up for any of the 29, but maybe that just makes them that much of a special case, not just in their own planet, maybe in a universal scale. But once again, in the multiverse, there may be another Naomi on a different Earth. Maybe she just happened to luckily land on an Earth where there's not a Naomi. But regardless, what's interesting too about what Zimbardo is showing her is because of her powers, she's actually able to manifest, because there was leaves falling, or more so dying in the memory, and she grabs one of them, and it's she can literally manifest memories, which is probably that's a dangerous ability all in its own right, because if probably memories ever become too much, you probably can end up manifesting your own nightmares or something in that regard. I don't know, the applications of what that ability could go and do, She actually kind of reminds me a lot of Dion from Raising Dion, where it's what can you not do? Because we now know she has X-ray vision, and which now it kind of almost looked more like heat vision the way she was using it. But I'm wondering I guess it's just any ocular vision thing. She kind of has enhanced vision plus which can be used to turn. I guess she can shift between almost X-ray and Can Superman do that? I always know the X-ray vision, but can that be shifted to be a heat vision or not? Not heat vision, but maybe I've always kind of got that twisted in my head. Well, no, it's X-ray vision versus being able to see heat signatures. I'm getting caught up in the minutia of it, but it seemed like it was more so she was reading heat signatures and not just seeing through the wall. She was seeing through the wall, but mainly also I guess it's just layers to I said an ocular ability like that. I've just never really I don't know if that's ever really come up before with Superman. Maybe it hasn't. I'm just not thinking correctly, or just my misunderstanding of just what her ability actually is. Maybe that's what it. But every time you turn around, she's got more and more abilities. Dion's situation from Raising Dion. He's a kid. He basically his power is I think of an ability, I can make it. So I don't think Naomi's in that regard, or maybe she can. Like, who knows the full extent of what she's capable of at this point in time. But obviously, along with Zumbato, we find out more about the 29. That the 29 represents the group of people who got special abilities. They weren't, because that's also the thing too. In my head, I'm thinking like, oh, so you guys legitimately aren't like aliens. You are just like, yeah, because you are from like, it'd be like, oh, like Alex from Earth 38 versus Alex that you cross paths with on Earth 1. It's like, no, it's the same. You're just a human. Like, you're just like, yeah, you're technically an alien because you're from a different universe, but still. It's that thing of like, yeah, they're just regular people. There were no abilities. It makes you wonder, did they have superheroes on their planet? Like, once again, I mean, on this Earth, there doesn't seem to be too many well-established heroes. Like I said, it just seems like heroes are from the comics, and the fact that Superman's real, but he's still considered a myth and a legend. But the 29 got their powers from, like, a comet storm that was, like... And the way Zumbato said, he was like, yeah, it was labeled an environmental disaster. He was like, our planet wasn't foolish enough to not take care of itself, so it doesn't seem like they have, like, the same environmental issues that exist on the Earth that they're currently on, plus, obviously, the real world. It seems like they took care of their planet. But it's like, he's like, whatever happened was beyond our control. Like, so... I guess either the universe set that in motion is almost what they kind of make it sound like. At least that's the way Akira's thinking it is. She's the one that kind of threw it out there that maybe it was destiny. Like, this was meant to happen. Like, maybe this is some, like, cosmic experiment that's something else. But for her to go, like, environmental disaster, so it must just be a thing that, like, humans couldn't have done anything about it. It wasn't something they caused. It was just a universal thing of, like, right, just the grand mystery of the universe. The universe just happened to send these, like, maybe radiated comets down, and that ended up, whatever it was, like, it doesn't seem like direct contact was needed, just maybe the moment it hit the atmosphere, it affected people, and it doesn't seem like they're all from the same general area. It's because the way they talk about it later on, Zumbato's like, yeah, the 29 basically scattered around the world. Now, either they all got the powers in the same local area, or it basically affected the entire world and just people all around 20, which is kind of a small pool. Out of anyone that could have gotten abilities, only 29 people? That's wild. Why such a small pool of people getting abilities? I guess it kind of keeps it in check, just kind of like, that way you're able to specify, like, who got abilities, whereas, like, Central City is able to keep it up in the air of, like, yeah, whoever was in Central City at the time may have gotten an ability, maybe not, when it comes to the whole meta-human situation, or, I think it's probably a little, I guess they're leaning more towards it kind of almost being, like, a Freeland thing, where it's, like, meta-humans were a byproduct of, like, an experimental thing that was happening in Freeland, rather than, like, so it was like not everyone, it was only like a select few people, whoever, you know, everything that went down in Black Lightning when it came to the initial like meta-human like bubble, versus like I said, Central City had the whole particle accelerator thing go up, which enveloped the entire city. So maybe, like I said, maybe it's a little bit more localized. We also got still unclear fully what Zumbato can do. It doesn't, I guess it's some form of telekinesis he has, because like he fell backwards, but that fear kicked in and it made his powers activate. And even, I love that he told Naomi, he's like, when I was younger, I was scared of everything, which he's also saying like, fear's not necessarily a bad thing. Without fear, there is no courage, you know, because courage is the byproduct of overcoming your fears, but also fear keeps you alive. Like, you know, if you're so, brave isn't, you know, brave is overcoming your fears, like, you know, just being all bravado beforehand can be your undoing. But, he has a form of, like, telekinesis because he could stop himself, because obviously, like, he's able to redirect energy and stuff like that, kind of do a little bit of a kind of psychic push a little. But, then we find out Akira is fire manipulation, so it doesn't seem like she can probably make fire. She could just probably, like, she's a firebender. Well, firebenders can spark fire out of anyone, but she's like a firebender meets a waterbender, because waterbenders can't just like make water out of nowhere. At least from what I know, just going by Avatar. Well, there's a whole bloodbending aspect, but yeah, it's like you need a source for her. She needs a source of fire, so it's not like, not unless her power can eventually spark to the point that it advances to the point she can just make fire. But like, right, it's not pyrokinesis. It's just straight up fire manipulation specifically. So. Not unless those are the same thing. Because when I think pyrokinesis, I think just being able to make fire with your own, like, fire starter, like that. Like, you could just make fires with your mind. Whereas, fire manipulation, I don't think those are, well, because, whatever, once again, getting caught up in the minutiae of it. But we find out, like, why Akira has such an issue with Zimbardo, that basically it's like, oh, you ruined their world. I thought he was like, oh, he, like, legitimately destroyed it or something. It's like, no, he ruined their world for the 29 because she believes he sold them out. Because it's like, no, Brutus had this disc and he told me the truth. I'm like, but why would you believe the guy who's your enemy? But I guess it's like, right, like, why would he feel the need to lie about it? It's like, well, he'd lie about it because he's trying to cover up the fact is that there are people amongst your group. Like, he probably wants to keep the true traitor hidden amongst your ranks, because that way you'll turn away from Zimbardo, because I guess Zimbardo is kind of like a key figure in it, and it's like, if you can destroy the 29 from the inside out, because, like, what do the other 29, what do the others of the 29 feel? Do they, like, did Akira tell them how her belief that is like, oh, you're the one who betrayed the 29, and, like, do the others feel the same way about Zimbardo? Is that why he's having a harder time tracking them down, or what? I mean, are they all on this Earth, too? I'd assume so because of that list, but, I mean, that could be like, no, they're just scattered to other planets as well, because Akira's here, but that doesn't, you know, maybe that's just by chance. Because he didn't really talk about it this episode, about the fact that she came here. Maybe she came here separately. I'd assume, like, I was under the impression it was a thing of, like, no, they all came here together and then just scattered to the winds. That's the thing, like, Zimbardo coming here, that makes me think, like, no, they individually scattered to the winds. What that necessarily looks like, we'll have to wait and see. But, like, I don't think they all plan to come to this Earth together. I think it might just be pure coincidence that him and Akira are here. Because Akira wouldn't want to go anywhere with him, because she doesn't trust him, right? And obviously we got introduced to what I can assume is technically our main antagonist, Brutus. The fact is that Zimbardo didn't really go into too much detail about why he hates them. Whether it's just a thing of, not unless it's on that mute level thing of, like, you guys are abominations. Because, like, it's like, why? They used their powers to help people, but not everyone was copacetic about that. But the question is, why? Is it because, like maybe, like, their planet is dying, and maybe they're seen as the cause of it, and Brutus believes, like, no, you have to be wiped out. The fact that Zimbardo doesn't tell Naomi the truth about why Brutus is after him, he's like, it's not important. I guess it's like, right, it doesn't matter why he's after us anymore, just that he is, and he's never going to stop. And it kind of goes into it, obviously, later on about why specifically he's after Naomi, because she's a special case. The moment he was kind of like, right, not everyone had abilities, so I was like, okay, so you're the first natural-born powered person amongst the 29. Now, like, everyone else was a normal human who got abilities. You were born with abilities. So, apparently her parents are two people within the 29. Zimbardo says he just made a promise to her parents that he'd look after her, and apparently he has. Like, throughout her life, he constantly checked up on her. So that also adds to the thing that some of them must have come here together. If not, the fact is they all must be here if Naomi's here as well. But why was she on that rock? Like I guess the means that they used to get here scattered them around. I don't know. We got some insight, like I said, in this episode, but we didn't get a lot. There's still so much we don't know. Even learning why Zimbardo is the way he is now. The way he is now is a byproduct of him coming to this Earth. It's like, right. He got treated differently, not just because of powers, and so he shifted and became a different person. He likes cars so much because, I forgot the exact analogy, but basically it's like, working on cars, there's a way to kind of shift and do things what you need them. You can make things into what you kind of need them to be. People aren't that malleable, so you kind of have to adapt to the situation. So he became who he is now as a byproduct of blending in on this Earth. So, being what he needed to be, who he needed to be in order to survive. So, and it seems like a lot of the issues that exist on this Earth obviously don't exist on his. You know, he makes it seem like it was a utopia, kind of a paradise. I mean, who's to say it didn't? I mean, it seems like its ugliness didn't come out until, like, later on, whatever Brutus's role in all of that is. How he got a whole bunch of people. Why he's sending people to hunt Naomi. We know that Zimbardo sees her as a means of saving their planet because of her powers. I made a Raising Dion comparison, but maybe it's kind of similar in that regard of like the corruption. Like Dion has the power to kind of save it and that stop that progression in that regard. So maybe it's something similar where their planet is degrading and dying, and Naomi has the power to legitimately go back and save it. It's just a big question is like why Brutus has such an issue with 29 powered people, but maybe we'll get those answers later on. I did like what Zimbardo said when he like sacrificed himself to over to Dr. Bell, just to make sure that Naomi got out. Was like, right, you punch a hole into another world, you have to be careful about what comes out, because it's like, right, if you using me as the focal point for it, like you punch a hole into another universe. If I'm lucky, I just go to another world. If I'm unlucky, it's most likely going to be a thing of you're going to probably get stuck in the space in between and get torn apart type of thing. She didn't really go into that, but that's just kind of an assumption on my part. But it's like, yeah, you don't know what could come through, which I'm assuming he's worried that might be Brutus, so... But for Dr. Bell, it's like this is her life's work, and she'll do whatever it takes to get there. Luckily, Naomi like ended up overloading her machine, which I figured like that'd probably be like the best result for it, is just to overload it. I don't know if Zimbardo kind of added his own power to it to kind of do that, because it's like, right, it's absorbing Naomi's, but you add in a little extra kick from him as well. Maybe that was enough to finally send it over the edge, so they were able to get out. We'll have to wait and see about Dr. Bell. I doubt we've seen the last of her. And I'm sure she's going to be a big reason why Brutus himself... Well, they already can track Naomi because they're tracking her power signature. But I'm sure Dr. Bell's going to end up inadvertently playing her own role in that. Her need for scientific discovery. In fact, she might even work with Brutus when he eventually pops up himself, just for the sake of, it'll help with my research. And it's like, right, you'll kind of serve as my right hand. To kind of get this done, help me track down this these abominations that are the 29, and I can help you like unravel the mysteries of not just your universe but so many others. The interesting byproduct of this is that Naomi does see Zimbardo in a different light. Now the thing is, she saw Zimbardo's memories and everything, and that's fine and dandy, but the problem is, yeah, but he's an unreliable narrator, essentially, because you got his perspective on a lot of things, not everyone else's. So there's still probably a lot Zimbardo's not telling her, obviously. But, you know. So there's a part of me that is suspicious, but I'm also leaning more towards, like, I want to believe Zimbardo, but it's still, like, throughout the entire episode, you can't help but have that nagging feeling, like, yeah, but he might not be telling you everything, so... But Naomi's perspective on him has completely changed. And even he said, like, right, the whole point is, like, don't believe what you think, but also think for yourself. Don't just, like, believe when someone tells you something, like, figure it out for yourself, you know? But she's like, how am I supposed to figure anything out when you literally won't tell me anything? So, now she has a better understanding of Zimbardo, what he's hoping for, what he needs her ready for, is that with her powers, they'll be able to save their planet. I do love on the other side of this, though, we also have Annabelle looking for Naomi, not telling her parents anything, but then stopping by Dee's place. And it's like, oh, have you seen Naomi? He's like, yeah, I just got back in town. She's like, okay. And she's like, well, maybe you can, you know, find her with her. And then he's like, looking at her like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you know, the wings. And he's like, so you know about that? He's like, yeah, Naomi, yeah, we tell each other everything. I mean, we're like Thelma and Louise, which I'm like, not the best example to use considering how that ended. Phineas and Billie Eilish, and then he's just still not saying anything, and she's like, oh, Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. Still throws me for a loop. I don't think that's the pairing a lot of people ever expected. I think that's why that hit so like, whoa, wait, Snoop and Martha Stewart? That's wild. But yeah, I love that she like ran the gauntlet of like different examples of stuff like that. Once again, I think Thelma and Louise is kind of like a wild example, just because it's like, you know how their story ends. That's not the pairing you want to represent, but you know, still, I get what you're going for there. So I even love they go to Zimbardo's and she's like, man, oh, now it's unlocked. And Dee looks at her and she's like, oh, not like I have firsthand knowledge about it. She's like, I already know you broke in here. And she's like, oh, so much for a life of crime. So I love that pairing, and he's just kind of like, okay, like, oh, but luckily they found out about Star Labs because Dee had already been keeping an eye on Dr. Bell. He just didn't know. Obviously, he was out of town when Naomi made these connections with Star Labs and Dr. Bell, so he didn't know about that. Luckily, it showed up in time to help Zimbardo and Naomi escape. And obviously, like, Annabelle's like, oh, we should come up with a name. But like, Dee's like, we shouldn't be making this a regular thing. And Annabelle's like, so I guess we should exchange numbers now and stuff like that. And he's just kind of like, what? And she's like, well, I guess, like, now that we're friends, I could just stop by the tattoo shop whenever I want to. He's like, that's not what I was thinking. She's almost kind of bummed. But he's like, but, if you ever need me, like, you know where to find me. It's like, you are a really good friend, Annabelle. Naomi's lucky to have you. And she's like, Naomi's lucky to have you too. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. Quite the odd pairings this episode. Dee and Annabelle, as well as Naomi and Zimbardo. So I thought that was kind of pretty interesting. Obviously, she still didn't tell her parents anything because she doesn't want to make them worry, but eventually it's going to come time, especially with the military looking into all of them. It's only a matter of time. There are threats on multiple fronts, whether it be Brutus and any hunters he sends this way. The way Zimbardo says, like, this most recent hunter isn't the first one, that there have been others in the past, so he will send another and eventually probably come here himself. I wonder, does he have his own, like, little elite task force? Like, obviously these are just bounty hunters, but does he have his own little kind of elite squad that he has to deal with stuff like this? We'll ultimately have to wait and see, but I'm really curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. We're getting some answers, but still quite a few unanswered questions as well as mystery, so we'll have to wait and see where the next episode takes us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.